Hello everyone, my name is Stella. I recently learned that there is nothing worse than envious neighbors. They can make your life unbearable. Yes, not friends, not relatives, but neighbors. This is generally a separate category of people who supposedly know about you the most, hate you the most, and smile masterfully into your eyes. Here we have such a neighbor. We live in the same entrance with her. Her mother is a housekeeper, so we have to not fight with them. Her mother is a bad-tempered woman. She will never say hello back, ask how you're doing, or answer a question normally. She rarely responds at all. To ask her for any information about the house, tenants, or repairs, you need to bring something from her favorite food. In short, a gift in the form of sweet or expensive alcohol. Oh, and it is harmful. But her daughter is even worse. Not only did she inherit her mother's most evil traits, but she is also envious. Although as a child, Dora and I were friends, when she and my mother moved into our house, I was the only girl who was friends with her. Even then, she had a wayward temper. She took toys from children that she thought were better than hers. But when she got a little older, she began to throw at girls who were taller than her or more beautifully dressed. In general, Dora was consumed by envy with a capital letter. So she lost everyone she knew, including me. When she was left alone, she began to spread all sorts of rumors and gossip with her mother about each of the neighbors. Everyone knew who created them and for what reason. We have learned to live with them without paying attention. Then Dora began to improvise. When I had a young man, she literally turned green with anger. James promised to pick me up to go to the movies, so Dora and her mother stopped him at the entrance and said that I had just left with a certain Michael. By the way, I don't even have such a classmate. Of course, my boyfriend didn't believe her, but it was still unpleasant. Then one day, when I was coming home in a new dress, Dora met me at the door. For no reason at all. She threw herself at me, hugging me tightly. I was taken aback by such tenderness, and only when I came home, I saw in the mirror that my dress was smeared with some paint that does not wash off. I was very angry. I wanted to go and kill her, but my mother stopped me, saying that such people never change and touching them will only make it worse. I didn't understand why she hated me so much, or rather me the most, until I saw Dora a little drunk at the club. I was surprised at all that she went to such places, and she came up to me. This time I didn't hug her. She told me that she hated me and my whole family, that she wanted to dress well, live well, and date boys just like I did, and she couldn't do that. I asked her why, and all she said was that it was because of my father. Dora passed out in a couple of minutes right in the club. I didn't wake her up. I just went home from there. The next day, while my mother was out, I went to my father and asked him what he knew about our neighbors. Father was a little weird about it and had no specific answer. This roused suspicion. I gathered my courage and went to their lair. Dora's mother, of course, almost started spitting foam at the sight of me, but her daughter stopped her and invited me to visit them. For the first time in so many years, I went to their house. The atmosphere was depressing. Old, smelly furniture, dark curtains. The apartment had not been ventilated for a long time. There were cats in the kitchen and in the bedroom, wool everywhere. I disdained to sit down anywhere, and then asked Dora what she meant by drunkhead. Dora started lying, but it didn't work, and then she started crying. "Promise me you won't tell anyone," she suddenly asked me. I agreed and held up my hands to prove that I wasn't lying. As it turned out, her mother met my father, and for a very long time, they had a great love. But my father left her when she became pregnant. He went to another woman, and a daughter, Dora, was born. After a while, they found out that he married a girl with money. They have a daughter, Stella. When I listened to her, I felt like the ground was slipping away from under my feet. I couldn't believe it. How did it happen? Why didn't Dad say anything? Why were they silent? According to Dora, my mother has been a little crazy ever since, and she didn't tell me because she was afraid. He doesn't recognize me and my mother. He wandered around the apartments all these years, and then finally found a suitable price here, and imagine our feelings when we saw it next door. She said, from that very moment, they both began to harbor hatred for my mother and me. Envy in general. Everything that is unpleasant. Well, over the years, other people have also become annoying. I stood there looking at my sister and couldn't believe what was happening. When I got back to my house, I went to my father and confronted him with the fact. He was in a state of shock, and I could see his hands shaking. Then he seemed to justify himself to me. I was just too young. I didn't know what to do, he said. I saw that he was not well and tried to calm him down as quickly as possible. After a while, I asked him to tell my mother. He did, though I didn't expect it. At first, my mother was angry, even slapped him, then cried and finally came to her senses. She agreed to talk about the whole situation with them and considered it fair. She and Dad were very prepared, even rehearsing the speech. We came to them a couple of days later in the evening with the whole family. When Dora's mother saw us, she got scared and ran away, locked herself in the bathroom, and yelled at us to get out. But my father managed to persuade her to come out and chat with us. It was a very long conversation. The hatred accumulated over the years was so deep that it was felt in every word. Dad did not want Dora's mother to be completely mired in negativity and go mad, so he asked her for forgiveness and also pledged to help. We started communicating as families. Since then, the rumors in our court have increased even more, but we didn't care about them. The main thing is that now we were honest with ourselves.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. For 15 years, I've been living with a lot of questions and a strange burden on my soul. All the people around me say that I do not look like my parents or grandparents, but like our neighbor, Uncle Matthew. To be honest, I'm not very happy to hear this. I didn't care before, and I didn't even understand these words. But now that I'm old enough, the thought of it makes me sick. In general, my parents are very good people. We have 4 children in the family, and I am the oldest. Mom and Dad always wanted more children because they were the only ones in their families. My mother often said that it was very sad to have no one to play with, and in adult life, after being left without parents, you feel lonely. I wasn't exactly familiar with that feeling. My parents got married early and gave birth every 2 years. They are sure that this way, the children will remain connected and they will be interested in playing and communicating with each other because of the small age difference. They were right. We are really close to each other, but I still sometimes feel out of my depth. I'll explain why. If you take our family photo, where we stand all together, the youngest brother looks like a grandfather, a sister like a grandmother, an older brother looks like a mother, and logically, I should have looked like my father, but for some reason, everyone says that I look like our neighbor, Uncle Matthew. Oh, that's what everyone in the neighborhood said. Everyone who knew my neighbor and my father. At first, I didn't care, because I was too young. And then, these conversations were embarrassing. Once, I even couldn't stand it and directly asked my parents why people say that. But my mom didn't say anything and lowered her eyes. And my dad was angry and also didn't explain anything. He left the room stupidly. This made me think that my neighbor Matthew was my real father. Uncle Matthew himself was a good neighbor. He always treated us with apples and raspberries from his own garden and gave us toys for the new year. However, my parents forbade us to take them. Uncle Matthew lived not far from us. I didn't know why he was so nice to us, especially to me. And my parents strictly forbade us from communicating with him. You know, it was just another confirmation that my theory was correct. Perhaps, once upon a time, he met with my mother. Maybe they were even in love. But for some reason, they broke up, and then Mom met Dad. My mother decided to marry him, but did not know that she was already pregnant with me. And when she gave birth, my father guessed everything, but decided to forgive her. Well, Uncle Matthew, who was madly in love with my mother, found out that she had given birth to a daughter, that is, me, and when I began to grow up, he recognized me as himself and bought a house closer to watch his failed family. That's the theory I had. I didn't share it with anyone, but I really wanted to get to the truth. And I had a plan. Every year, my parents and I went away for a few days to visit my mother's friend at the dacha. It was our little vacation. I came up with a plan in advance and told my parents that I wanted to stay at home, study English, and improve my subject before school. They agreed. When the day of departure came, I saw the household off and went into the house. The first thing I did was go through all the documents. My birth certificate, my parents' marriage certificate, even the documents of my younger siblings, just in case. Everything was clean, nothing suspicious. I carefully put everything in one folder, as it was, and wanted to put it in place, and suddenly a photo fell out of the folder. It was black and white and battered, and the image was blurry, but still visible. And then I just fucked up. What? Are my parents and Uncle Matthew in the photo? Threesome in a cafe? How so? Oh no, were they really best friends? Of course. It all fits together now. At this point, I was so nervous that I even got a headache. I couldn't believe my eyes. How did it happen? What really happened? It was like being hit on the head with a hammer. In some ways, I was disappointed in my uncle's relationship to my parents, and I also felt sorry for my father. How could he forgive my mother? After all, she had been carrying someone else's child under her heart for 9 months. How did it feel? No, wait, and then raise a child that isn't your own. And you know, my father never hurt me in anything. I, as the eldest child, was first of all the children, and my father spent a lot of time with me. Even when the other children arrived, my connection to him remained special. Now I loved and respected my father twice as much, and I suddenly felt so hurt for him. Just imagine how it hurts and hurts him every time he hears that I am not his own daughter. This is terrible. Also, this damn neighbor moved in next to me and made my eyes bleed. I decided to take matters into my own hands and went to Uncle Matthew's house that evening. I knocked loudly on the door, and when he opened it, I didn't even say hello and went inside. He was very surprised at my arrival and impudence, but did not drive me away. To be honest, I was so excited that I couldn't start talking. After all, my own father was standing in front of me. I hated him for some reason. "Is everything all right, honey?" he asked, and tears rolled out of my eyes. These incomprehensible feelings, uncertainty, anger, pain, all this neighborhood gossip that my family is tired of. All because of him. Don't call me that. He was surprised. "Is everything all right?" he asked after a moment, and I stood like a statue, silent and crying. Then I threw the photo at him. "How did your conscience allow you to live with us all these years? Or are you just trying to make fun of us? Dad?" The words made his eyes widen even more. "What? Dad? What are you talking about? What kind of dad?" he asked in surprise. I told him that I knew everything, and there was no need to pretend. "I figured it out, and I don't need to lie. You dated my mother and then broke up with her, but she gave birth to me by you. That's why you're so partial to our family. That's why Dad hates you and Mom avoids you, right?" The neighbor stood shocked, confused, and then began to laugh. He laughed hysterically, and then said I had too much imagination. Now I was confused. "Do you really think so?" "No, dear. If that were the case, I would be only too happy to have a daughter like you," he said. I didn't know what was going on. Then Uncle Matthew said something I wasn't ready for at all. "Your dad and I are brothers," he blurted out. "Brothers? Can't be." In a state of shock, I tried to digest the information and could not believe what was happening. But how and why didn't Dad say anything? It turned out that he and Dad had a fight about something a few years ago. Uncle Matthew has long forgotten about this, but Dad is still sulking. They don't look alike because my dad looks like my grandma, and my uncle looks like my grandfather. And somehow, I was also born looking like my grandfather and uncle. The neighbors didn't know this because Dad didn't want to recognize his brother because of an old conflict, so he didn't tell them that he had a brother. Well, my mother was silent because my father told her to be, and the photo was taken before I was born. "We were celebrating your parents' wedding anniversary," my uncle explained. Finally, everything fell into place. I, of course, could still not recover from the shock, but I was happy to learn that we have another relative. When my parents arrived, I told him everything and asked my father to stop sulking at his brother. He resisted for a long time, but I had a good talk with him. Uncle Matthew came to our house with a cake and gifts, after which he and my father talked for 3 hours straight about their personal lives. Now, all the rumors about my mother's infidelity have disappeared, and new ones have appeared about why the brothers did not communicate with each other. In short, I understand that neighbors' gossip is an endless thing.